Okay, welcome to Art is Trauma number. I don't know what number we are on. And we are doing Gerard Hauptmann's The Weavers and Hannele. All right, Chris, what was your impression?
My impression was it would be very hard to be an actor in The Weavers.
Why is that? Why do you say that?
Well, your line, just memorization. It's a lot of characters and it's a lot of non-main characters and it's a lot of holding the torch of the action and passing it to the next person based
Yeah,
on the scene. And I think that would be a different trickiness where obviously in Hanel, there is a very obvious degree of character consistency that you would not have that issue with at all.
actually, with
That's
Hannele, it's like over consistency because it'd be played by the same actor, doing multiple roles. You know, like the school teacher is playing Jesus also, and the
yes, and
mother.
actually in there you have an inversion that was part of my thought, which is that I think it was a brilliant choice for you to suggest us reading these two plays back to back
Mhm.
because there was a lot of inversions I thought
Yeah.
early,
So,
and you
just so our audience knows what's up, The Weavers is a play about like 1840 Silesia, about weavers in the manufacturing industry, and they're basically starving and miserable, and the management is not particularly good to them. And they end up having a revolt. They storm the manager's house, and it ends with tragedy and misery. It's hard to. That's all I can really say. It's an ensemble piece where there are individual characters that stand
yeah.
out and are memorable, but no one person is guiding the action exactly. And while Hanel is a very sad piece, and actually my favorite play, um, about a young girl, young innocent girl who lives in poverty, is abused by her stepfather, and here's Jesus in the water one winter night, goes into the lake, and well, we see her as she's dying of hypothermia and also having beautiful and heart-rending hallucinations about heaven, and other things. So anyway, so let's get into it. So, what were you saying about whatever, Chris?
Oh, okay. So for the Weavers, um, I believe that the subject of the play is the people themselves, not any one
Yeah.
person. Even though you are right, obviously Hauptmann has no issues characterizing people.
Mhm.
Um, the most he almost characterizes by resistances to the people. So, for example, the character who dies at the end. Okay, I'm going to do spoilers. We're just
Yeah,
going to do.
yeah, we know that. We're past spoilers,
We're
okay?
past spoilers. You
That,
better
that,
read
that
this
fucking
thing.
introduction I gave was past spoilers.
Yeah, yeah, right. Okay. So spoiler alert: an
That
old
old
man
Hilsa.
dies.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's old.
and he's a fantastic character. He's great. But he also shows this calm reasoning resistance while also being from within the Weavers. And I think he gains the most individuality as a character almost through his resistances to that main body, the masses.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting way like they get played against. There are some characters that are unnamed that are just left as Weaver 1, Weaver 2, Weaver 3.
Yeah.
And then there are ones that get more character. Like for instance, the one at the beginning, not Jaeger, but Becker. Like he's the one who's sort of starting trouble and saying, 12 and a half or 13 and a half gross is not enough for a man to live. And he's the one starting the trouble along with Jaeger, and an ex-soldier and salesman who happens to stop in town. Um, there's a certain fury, young angry men starting trouble, and like they stand out, but there's also a lot of ones who are just an indistinguished crowd, and like when we really feel the indistinguished crowd is like in that first scene when the manager Dreisinger comes out and is saying like, "Oh, you people complaining about your low wage. Well, I have anxieties too." And I mean,
And he does. I mean, and like he does. They're just like not related. You
Well,
know.
I mean, like there is a certain. Well, one thing is like there is. When I was reading that, when I was reading Hauptmann, basically all these little things that he's saying that are anxieties for the manager. I'm thinking, well, is not exactly a stress-free job managing a wool concern. Like there is international competition and that sort of thing. But the way that those things are canceled out very quickly, like he says, like, well, I buy all these pieces of wool from you people, but how do I know that I'll be able to sell them? And that's a legitimate concern. That's an anxiety an entrepreneur has. But the problem is he then goes and hires like 200 more people. Like you're not worried about selling them if you're hiring 200 more people.
Yeah,
And
you could
and
read
like
him as like totally dishonest, or you could read him as just genuinely by the association he has, just incapable of broaching the barrier.
yeah, he's presented more as broaching the barrier, as in he's more just this is just when you're put in this circumstance, this is the kind of monster you become on some level. As in, like, one thing that happens, which immediately makes you sure that you have no sympathy for him, is a young child faints from hunger and
Yeah.
exhaustion. And people are worried, and he's worried, genuinely worried. And the first words that comes out of the kid's mouth when he starts to talk is hungry or something like that. And he says he doesn't understand. He doesn't like there's
Oh,
this.
oh, we must be coming from different parts of the country. I think he wants a toy horse. Everybody
Yeah,
get him
yeah,
a toy horse and put it on your
you
mouse. And he
there,
runs away. Yeah.
yeah, like there's a certain, like there's a clear well, I mean, Hauptmann is a full-blown naturalist, so he's not judging anybody, but he does view Dreisinger as contemptible. This is a particular kind of fungus that you're not going to judge, but you don't like fungus.
Yeah,
Um,
and like I think that like the on the most like I'm just gonna say maybe this is boring level of difference is that is like a a hierarchy of needs difference, right? Like these people, the first thing you get is like they ate their dog and they're starving, and you're like, okay, that's like we're at a different level than the anxieties that the owner has. It's not they're not at that same verticality.
yeah, and one thing is when a touchstone for me, of course, is Zola's Germinal, which is a very similar kind of setting of a coal mine, and the desperation of the people, and contrasting that against the managers. But one thing is that like Zola is actually much more sympathetic with management. Like there is actually
Oh,
more, which is just kind of funny. Like there is more of a sense of these people, like the managers actually are human beings who do have their own genuine tragedies in their own lives. Like the manager, like a manager, not owner, but manager, is impotent. So he actually envies his workers for the fact that they can go fuck in the fields.
right, 'cause you can't.
Well, he can't do that. But
Some kind of
poor guy, and it's like,
So
but
in this one, by the way, I actually did feel that for me, there's two characters that complicate the binary between like right like the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Like
yeah.
the two characters that complicate this are the educator, who is like, well, maybe they're right. Okay, I gotta go, and then runs out. The teacher
Let's see, I'm forgetting the teacher.
name. The teacher's in the house of the landowner,
Oh yes, yes, I
like
forgot. I
offering
forgot.
some
Yeah, yeah,
criticism.
the tutor or
The tutor is basically saying just like
yeah.
basic fact shit. Excuse me. I mean my French. I mean, just like they're just like kind of he's just really breaking it down to the real. Just like they don't have this. Maybe we can help more. It's something very modest, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's I forget his
There's
Weltzig
so
or
many characters. For anyone who's watching and hasn't read it, there's a lot of
yeah.
characters.
There is several.
Yeah,
Um,
there are a lot of people. This is a War and Peace 5-act play. It's an
yeah,
epic.
Yeah, it's not that hard to follow at the time, but it's a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, I mean, like the sad little tutor, like just mentioning, like, well, like they are kind of in dire
Hungry.
poverty.
Yeah.
Um,
No, the most contemptible character for me of the whole play, and I wonder if this could be a source of argument actually, is the priest.
why do you feel that way?
So I felt like he sort of was doing the religion is the opiate of the masses shit.
Hmm.
And, all of the actions that the peasants could take to better themselves through any type of force whatsoever, he, it wasn't derided materialistically. He was the one who spoke about them as less than human.
Yeah. There is. Yeah, I think actually I have it right here. Kittle House is extremely indignant. It says, "Won't this nonsense ever come to an end? Now, really, I must say, it's time the police took a hand. Permit me." He steps to the window. "Look at that vine hold. There aren't only young people. The old steady weavers are running with the crowd. Men whom for years I have considered to be respectable and pious are in with them. They're taking part in this unheard of nonsense. They are trampling God's law under their feet. Perhaps you would still like to defend these people even now." Um, that's, and I think it's Vinehold is actually the tutor you mentioned. Certainly not, sir. That is Sir cum grano salis. I think like, with little grain. You must realize they are just hungry, ignorant men. They are expressing their dissatisfaction the only way they know how. I don't expect such people. Wait, is it? Wait, Kittle House is the priest, right? I'm not losing my mind. I hope I'm not losing my mind here. I'm dying here.
So
Let
many
me.
people.
Oh my
I just,
God, there's
I
too
just,
many
that's what I just
polls.
refer to the roles. Yeah,
Okay,
Pastor
okay.
Kittle.
Vinehold was the tutor. Kittle, yeah, Pastor Kittle House,
Yeah, you're right. You
right
got
there
it.
in the blessed playbill or whatever it is.
Which, by the way, just to show everyone so they don't think we're complete idiots,
Yes,
that whole page is just characters.
yes. There are severals.
Which I
Um,
was very, when I finished that play, I was like, wow, what a great play. And then I saw the Hannele and I went, oh, thank God.
yeah.
But like, this is one where, I mean, okay, there is a reasonable critic of everything I've been doing when you suggest plays, which is
Mhm.
I've just been freaking reading them. And in my mind, I have a long list of all of them to now go and watch. And I think that there's a reasonable critic would say, hey, Chris, how could you go without watching them? And I would say, I'm a good hallucinator. But
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Like I have a big imagination, but for that critic, I am going to watch all these. Don't worry, they're coming. It's coming. I just
Yeah,
like to read it
if
first.
there's a good edition or a good rendition that you could recommend, let me know. I just generally just feel like I'll be just the few times I have, I just end up feeling frustrated. Like that's not how he'd say it, you fuck. Um, like that's just how I feel. Like, which I mean, it's like I mean, plays are a little bit like movies to novels to movies of violence will be done in the process because the director is not the writer. Um,
But also, creativity will be done. In a
yeah,
good rendition,
yeah, that's the violence,
better
and
than
it's
the
like
play.
maybe there's good reason to like change it and to say something different. Like I'm sympathetic with
Yeah.
reinterpretations, but
Like all those great. One of my favorite adaptations of a play for a film is Roman Polanski's Macbeth. It
okay.
is his wife was just murdered, and his next thing he makes is Macbeth, and it is soaked in that pathos. It is soaked in it. It's great.
But getting back to Kittle House,
Yes.
yeah, I feel like I'm sympathetic with why you are so unsympathetic with Kittle House. Of Dressinger, at least he's a man who like he's keeping the mills together. And I do think there are genuine anxieties. The man feels like there is international competition. He is and he's not presented as the big bad guy ultimately. It is just like, no, that's just the world economy. He's just, if he
And
does,
there was a it's a downturn. It's very clear that
yeah.
obviously we're not this isn't the it's an economic downturn at this time.
Yeah, well, Kittlehouse is a open hypocrite.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who's supposed to have moral values, and he's the one who's looking down on Vinegold, Vinehold, for like, like how can you defend these people? Um, so I'm told. So I think I'm on board with feeling like that's the most repulsive person of the bunch. And of course, it really is great though when it's just like they're saying, it was in the bar scene when they're just saying like, God, the way these poor people like spend all their money on those big funerals, how do the pastors let them do it? And then they say like, well, the pastors get a cut of it, so they strongly discourage a small, quiet funeral.
That made you go like, okay, like I mean, you read this and it kind of reminded me when we read Galileo, and I sometimes turn on my religion poisons everything hat, and I briefly that comes on and they go, no, 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 more subtlety, subtlety. But there is sort of that sentiment I think in the play of like, look, there's no problem that a person like Pastor Kittlehouse can't make worse because the divide is very specific to me. It's the fact that these are real concrete problems in the lives of like people, and Kittlehouse's argument is basically that the structures man makes are the divine structures. He says that all the time, and that is the same thing we still have. That's that's not all religious thinking, but it is Kittlehouse's thinking, is that when you transgress certain aspects of man's laws, you're by de facto transgressing divine laws.
Yeah, I forget which the Christian fathers said it, but it's like you have to respect the powers that be. Someone in like the fourth century, I can't remember anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, of course, they're saying that in the fourth century after Constantine's gotten power. Um, but
Oh, by the way, as an aside on this play, you know, I was trying to do a little research on the historical aspect of it, and
yeah,
I just got so confused because it's this area of the world I know nothing about.
yeah, Cilicia.
And yeah, it's like poor. I mean, it's not a lot going on, and it also sucks. Like it looks terrible, and like there's all these lurch, but it really did have that lurch towards democratic motion, right? It was such. I was like, wow, this would be so grindingly slow, the progress that they were going through, and then every turn it's like, oh, and then there was a massacre. Oh, and then they died. Oh, and then they starved. I was like, wow, this really does suck.
Yeah, yeah, it really is a and like Hauptmann apparently like he's basing this off of the recollections of his grandfather, and like the sort of stories he would tell about being, I guess, one of these weavers,
Yeah.
um, or he's in the community of weavers, something like that. So there's now do you feel in any way that this is too heavy-handed of a play, or do you feel like it's just right?
I felt like it made sense to the means at the time. I mean, it's dire, so the telling is a little dire. Um, a little like I guess that would be a critique that I had more about Hannele than this play. I thought the tone was good, especially with Old Hilsa.
Yeah,
I thought the figure of Old Hill. I think like this is really a political play, right? And in a certain sense, you have to engage with certain amounts of like, what do these people actually believe? And it would have been more heavy-handed were there not a figure like Old Hilsa who believed the messages from the church, who was really caught, really torn, and was executed beautifully. So I think that Old Hilsa for me makes the play really, really enjoyable.
yeah, actually, and let's just get a little bit of old Hilsa here. He's talking to his, I think, son-in-law or son, one of them, Gottlieb. I'm telling you, Gottlieb, don't go and doubt the only thing poor folks have got. Why would I have to sit here and work the treater like a slave for 40 years and more, and watch quietly how that fella over there, one of the managers, lives in pride and gluttony, and makes money out of my hunger and hardship? And for what? Because I've got hope. I've got something in all this misery, pointing out the window. You've got your share here, me and the world beyond. That's what I've been thinking, and let myself be drawn and quartered, I am that sure. It has been promised to us. Judgment day is coming, and we are not the judges. No, on the contrary, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So he's like he has this intense sense of, yeah, he knows that the Dressinger and the managers are, feeding off of him. He knows that the system of the world is unjust, but he realizes the system of the other world will be just. That Judgment Day is coming, and he's living for that. His resentment is funneled into his hope for salvation, which is a nice counterbalance.
Yeah, it's just different from the material, but also
like it's cut from the same cloth in the sense that he's not genuinely defending them. He knows they're bastards, but he has that religious fervor, which makes him twists it in the other direction. Like, well, I'm not going to stand up against them.
Well, one could argue, okay, so like that is. I hate this phrasing because it doesn't age well, but like it's definitely like a categorical example of Nietzschean slave morality, the punishment in the divine afterlife, since nothing will be done now. Where I think it's interesting is that it's almost like that religious voice, it like prepares him to die like right away. Like he's kind of going to die, right? And he even says it a couple times, like, I'm going to die in 5 months. And I do think that counterbalancing voice isn't. I don't think we're meant to agree with Hilsa, but I also think that the points that he's making about the mob come to fruition and how he dies, right? Like he's just there.
He's the one who's most resigned to his fate. He's the one who doesn't care whether he dies or not. And in a sense, he's not actively suffering as intensely as some characters. He's not in any explicit way, like his the mother in the second scene of the play, God knows her name. Like she can't get out of bed, and she's got horrible arthritis, rheumatism. So her life's just misery. Like, she'd be better off dead. But here we have old Hilsa, he's one-armed. He says he's fucking one-armed. The poor guy. He got his arm shot off in some war.
Yeah.
Maybe in 1812 or something against Napoleon. But he's the poor guy is just working away, and he's just, I'm ready for death. He doesn't do the least thing to stop himself from dying, which I don't quite understand why he's the one that dies. I emotionally get it. I feel like that was the right choice, but I don't know why that's the right choice.
Do you think it's partially because, like, okay, so what's one of the big problems with mob violence is the wrong target. Like, sure, kill the landowner. I mean, whatever. I mean, not real. I mean, but whatever. Just play like you want. As in war, like kill the Nazis. Sure, the bad guy dies, but the problem with mob violence is obviously that it is so susceptible to influence. I think Hauptmann did a good job. Like the mob almost killed the old man themselves.
It's a furious, it's a bloodthirsty, insane thing, and there's like so many wonderful details of it. It's just like they're literally getting drunk off the cellars that they pillage, and they're not even bothering to uncork. Just fuck it, just break the bottle and just drink it, and it doesn't matter if you're cutting your mouth.
And that reminded me of the historic. I mean, they mentioned the French Revolution, which obviously makes sense, but the the French Revolution, the more you read about, right, the more you're like, wow, that's awful. Wow, that's awful. Whoa. And it's not all the tennis court oath.
Yeah,
And
yeah. That's what's so fucking tragic about it. It starts off beautifully. It's like, oh
yeah,
man, this is a democracy that we can get behind.
although,
American Revolution in France.
when I forget at what point, but it might have been before the tennis court oath. There was a incident of them deposing the monarchy that was kind of like this, people singing, the blood flowing, and
Yeah,
the heads
yeah.
on sticks and
I'm not very familiar with the history, but yeah,
it's
but
like this, it's kind of the
well,
same.
at least later on, it's like, okay, this is okay. This is just maniacal. This is things are out of control. No one's in control of this creature, of the crowd. But I guess for me, like, why I feel like the reason why it's right that old Hilsa dies. I guess there's a couple things. One is that if someone needs to die, like, just this is the kind of play where it ends on a death. It would be weird if you didn't have something very tragic happen.
Yeah.
Um, like that. So it can't be like someone like Dressinger, because that'd be sort of too much of a happy ending almost. That would be like, obviously. Um, you can't have somebody who's like good unless you want to end it on the point of like, oh, this is a failed revolt. Which I'm not sure why he doesn't do that. I'm not sure why.
It was sort
Well,
of.
it
They
doesn't.
want.
It doesn't actually end. It doesn't actually end saying that it's a failed revolt in here. It says the last lines of Act 5.
Oh, I just meant in the real life.
Oh, okay, in real life. Well, but it doesn't really talk about it. It presents it as. I know in real life it is in that way. And maybe that's just a context that, like, anyone knows what's up. But it's like, Gottlieb runs out with an axe. Let's see. What are we, mad dogs? We're going to eat powder and shoot instead of bread? Hesitating with the axe in his hand to the old man. Am I? Okay. Here I come. No, that's not relevant.
It just kind of continues off into the other scene. It continues on off
Oh,
stage.
well, here we go. No, it says, okay, in italics. He says, a volley is fired, fatally hit. Old Hilsa rises from his stool and then falls forward over the loom. At the same time, loud cries of "Hooray!" are heard, shouting, "Hooray!" The people who have been standing in the entrance hall rush outside. So there's this simultaneous, like, they're sort of like having a moment of victory, the crowd, against the assembled riot police, or whatever they would be.
Army.
Yeah, the army. Against the assembled army, like, there's a hooray of like, we're getting out, we're doing it, but he gets shot in that process. I guess there's maybe more of a grim irony being presented of, we know this is going to end badly. We know this is going to be terrible. But during this supposed victory, we have this sort of innocent and deeply tragic bystander of old Hilsa who just wanted nothing to do with it getting slaughtered.
Yeah, it's kind of like Have you ever seen the movie Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee?
No.
It's I think you'd like it. It's
Okay.
kind of like this. Yeah, but it's in the ghetto, and it's about class differences between races boiling over into this again with this pizza joint, and there is this deep ambiguity in the film as to what the right thing is to actually do. Like, do you rise up and fight? Like, how do you actually better yourself in the world Spike Lee presents? And so it sort of just embraces that. And I think Hauptmann here, I think it would be aesthetically displeasing if he just said, like, yeah, workers of the world unite. Here is my propaganda play. Have a good day. it wouldn't really be a work of art in the way it is. So
Yeah. Okay.
our
I'm
viewpoint,
actually. This is. Yeah. This is. I think you're right here. The way I'd put it is the prophet. What's. Let's see, I'm just trying to think. What's the right word I'm coming up with? It's the. Okay, we already have it seen clearly that this mob is out of control, that they're a mess, that's confusion and drunkenness.
Mhm.
And they're really harassing the old man, before this happens. And to have the old man die, that just adds the sense of it's this dumb fury has killed one of its own, has resulted in the death of an innocent bystander. It makes it more sordid and directionless, dumbly tragic, in the sense of like if old bomb art, another sort of old man character who's getting strung along, goes along with the mob. If he died, then it'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, like fuck around and see, like that. That's kind of the response.
I'm sorry, the phrase is "fuck around and find out."
I would find out. Okay, that's it. Okay, I'm my master. I'm not a master of contemporary phraseology. So
Welcome to another episode. It's what YouTubers always do when there's like some funny thing happening. It's welcome to another episode of Fuck Around and Find Out. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree, but I also think that Hauptmann is more sympath. I think that the ultimate viewpoint that Hauptmann emerges with to me is still one of humanism in the sense of like I think that while the mob is unthinking and obviously he critiques the mob putting Helsa in there, I think there's also a certain message of like, well, how would you better this situation for these people?
yeah,
what alternative do these people have?
yeah. It's. I mean, one thing about it is, I guess stepping away from the play in a certain sense, and just talking about the industrialization in the 19th century, is that it's like, well, it made life livable. Like that's one thing we have to say is like, yeah, like these people end up being Luddites, and they're like destroying machinery. And it's like, yeah, that machinery is making life livable for people, making it so they can afford clothing. Um, that's one sort of just economic fact you have to recognize is this is not doing making the world better in any way. This revolts, um, and I
You
just
don't
am
think it
not.
leads to rights for underprivileged workers? I mean,
Wait,
this.
could you say that again?
Well, I mean, I not too long later, you have the great strikes in America, which produced rights for people. I mean, isn't there?
No, no, I'm not saying as in yeah. You can definitely say that many abuses that were done would be corrected. It's just not really the fact that they're Luddites. To me, makes it more of just an almost an impotent act of fury. At least, I mean, I don't know exactly what Hopman's stand is on economics, and I don't know what it is there, but I'm not sympathetic with that part. I am sympathetic in the context of Hopkins' world. Like I understand why they're doing it, but it's to me like it's just rather like no, that's setting progress in reverse. Like these people have it really desperately hard, but it's also like yeah, and that's how all of history was. Like when you read about what life was like in the 16th century, it's like one thing that they would do during plagues, one like job that like a plague doctor or whatever would have is they'd burn the clothing that someone would die in because otherwise other people would wear that clothing because that's just how poor people were. And that's something
Yeah,
it's like okay, well this kind of poverty has always existed, and it's not something new in the 19th century. Maybe the grunginess, arguably, the fact that you're not out in the open air, that's new. But I'm not gonna. But in terms of just mass starvation, like starvation's been a fact of all human history until the 19th and 20th.
Well, I guess my perspective is kind of basically the opposite, is that there is no progress made until open rebellion. I mean that's and it can be peaceful rebellion. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like saying now let's go fight people. Like it's always different in every era, but like I mean the civil rights movement was couched as an economic fortuitousness to stay for the white people, and yet it was wrong.
Well,
And
what I'll say about it is I agree that there were real abuses going on, and if no one is actually pointing it out in just the intelligentsia and the culture, then having a rebellion like this actually does point that out. Like just having, I mean, just like something like the million, using your sort of example, like Million Man March. It's like just having a million black people come out and say, "Hey, we're really repressed down there. You see us? There's a million of us." Um, that's very important to do in order to like
but didn't
point out a problem.
legislation force economic change? Like you're talking about economic change as forcing social change, which I think, by the way, don't get me wrong. Yeah, there's definite times of that. I mean, look at AI. AI comes, and now we have to figure out what we're going to do. But in the case of a lot of these workers' movements, the workers forced the issue to produce the change itself. It's the other way around.
Well, I guess one thing, legislation was never going to make clothing cheaper or food more abundant uh, or have the kind of wealth or make indoor plumbing, a economic possibility for the majority of people. I don't see these things as you need machinery, you need an industrial society to make those things possible for humanity. Um, and I think you need. So I'm just gonna put that as like context of no matter how many unions there are concerned about workers' welfare, ultimately you need to learn how to make it so that one person cannot just feed two people, but can feed 100 people.
So, do you think that in this play, wouldn't the play itself be the social
Yeah,
evidence?
yeah,
Like the
like
play,
as in,
like to bring it back to some place I think we'd probably agree is isn't the play.
yeah. Like the play is doing that. If like it's pointing out, like, look, there's real misery in the world.
But more specifically, okay, so that period of Silesia, as I already said, it kind of sucked, and it didn't seem very hopeful. And as you said, obviously, I don't think we're meant to read this and get to the end and like, and now them workers going to be doing good. Like, no, that's ridiculous. But the fact is, he wrote it in the 90s, 1890s, where there were huge changes in labor rights through immense violence and loss of life all around the world. And I think that the fact that he wrote it when he did really speaks to a tacit uh, support of, in general, workers'
Oh yeah,
rights.
I'm sure he was in support of all of that. I'm just mentioning though that it's like the machines that they're destroying are the machines that are going to make a developed world possible.
So, for
Um,
example, to bring it to something where it's basically analogous to today, would you not recommend we just ignore AI? Great,
well,
because
actually,
like
on
I mean,
AI,
like,
it's like I want there to be self-driving cars.
yeah,
I want them to replace endless number of jobs, just like computers replace and just like
yeah,
machines replace. Like I
and
want that.
create new jobs. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think we're actually kind of on a similar point here, where like, so AI comes along, and you have, for several really interesting reasons, workers' strikes. But the one viewpoint within those strikes that I go, oh, wait a minute, is sort of ban like language, which is like kind of the like we're going to destroy the machine like language, where instead it's like, well, no, we can't act as if this technology is going away. Like we have
Yeah,
to integrate it into our framework.
yeah. I mean, it's just I'm not like one thing is I'm very sympathetic with these poor illiterate people starving when they want to destroy the machines. I get it in the sense of they're literal illiterates. I'm not sympathetic though with people who want to ban AI when it's like, okay, yeah, it cost of living in California is high, but you have an iPhone, you have indoor plumbing. Like you're not I'm not sympathetic with somebody who is living in the first world, who has this world of opportunities. There's still limits, there's still real problems, but it's
You
they're
don't
not
think pay should keep
levers.
up with cost of living?
What?
You just don't think pay should keep up with cost of living?
Well, I don't think. Well, as in, I don't think that that is in any way. As in, I'm okay with the idea of like, okay, and this is getting way too political. We should get more back to the art issue.
Oh, I mean,
Um,
I think this is a political play. I
well,
think we
I
should be
don't.
talking
My
about
value in it isn't about the politics, actually. Like to me, I just view this at like I know it is political. I think he had in mind politics, but the reason why it's an immortal work of art isn't because you should pass, legislative order 249-6. It's like no, that's not what it's about. It's about this is the human condition. Life is miserable and brutal and incommunicably foul, and here are some earnest people with real human feelings who are suffering that. It's to me just it's like Hannele or Hannele. I keep calling her
which
Hannele.
we're going to get to in a second here. By the way, the last thing on the politics thing is I come from a completely different worldview, which is totally fine. I support uh, a general strike actually in the country, so I'm very sympathetic with workers uh, across the country for numerous reasons. So I'm very supportive of the SAG strikes. Have donated. I mean, I'm very supportive of most strikes, Starbucks strikes, for numerous reasons. But that's just kind of my position on strikes and
Yeah, I'm gonna differ wildly on that, but we're gonna drop the issue for now because we're here to talk about literature. Um, but okay, but actually, just actually on this issue though, of is it a political work or more? It's like to me, it's just this is his presentation of life. It's brutal, mean, sordid, confused, and you have people who are helpless and directionless and but there's like some bit of goodness in many of them. There's a real burning innocence about a lot of them. And like even like like to take one who's like particularly like what's the word, disillusioned, but like it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching. This is actually, I think, his daughter-in-law, old Hilsa, and she's yelling at him, completely uncontrolled. Uh, let's see. You with your bigoted talk, it never filled one of my baby's bellies. All four of them laid in filth and rags on account of it. They didn't so much as dry one single diaper. I do call myself a mother, and now you have it. And you know what? That's why I wish all the manufacturers in hell and damnation. It's because I am a mother. Can I keep a little worm like that alive? I've cried more than I've breathed from the moment one of them tender little creatures first came into the world, until death took pity on it and took it away. You, old Hilsa, didn't give a damn. You prayed and you sang, and I walked my feet bloody or for just a drop of skim milk. How many hundreds of nights I've racked my brains just once to cheat the graveyard of a baby of mine. And tell me what's wrong with that a little baby like that has done, huh? That he has to come to such a miserable end over here at Dietrich's that bathed in wine and washed in milk. No, no, I tell you, if it starts here, 10 horses won't hold me back. And anyway, it's like that's just incredibly beautiful. It's just that vision of her, like she's had four babies die on her, and like she's just screaming uncontrollably, losing it. Like that's just like there's real human earnestness that's just been savagely brutalized by this world in which she's thrown into.
yeah, but not the world of Hauptmann.
well,
Again,
well,
again, like I think there's more to why he wrote it when he did. That's not just looking back.
Well, it's not as in yeah.
transcends the time
I'm
and
sure
place.
he's viewing it in economic dimensions, but if it was just an economic play, it's just like, well, who gives a fuck? I don't care about like frankly, I don't care about whatever people were doing in the 1840s. Like I only care about it in the sense, or or for me, like it in the 1890s. Like it wouldn't matter to me if it weren't for the fact of I can relate to these people. I can see this human suffering. I've suffered
Yeah.
not in any dimension like that, but I can look and feel like that was just dumb and ugly, that misery that I suffered, and I can relate to what she's saying.
So would our ultimate contrast then be The Jungle? Have you ever read that book?
No, no, I haven't read The Jungle.
Oh
I
my
will
gosh.
one day, but I'm sure I'll hate it.
Okay, so The
Um,
Jungle lacks a lot of what we've been talking about in the subtlety and characterization and niceness of Hauptmann's writing, because in The Jungle, first of all, there's a formula. It's a circle where like someone dies, tragedy, they continue, someone else dies, tragedy, and it's really bad. But in the middle of it, there are sort of like propagandistic lectures, I would say, if I remember right. And so I think that uh, we read that in my AP US history class when I was in high school. And the other one we read was Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, which I think is a perfect novel where there's not this propagandistic speech. So I think that when I read Upton Sinclair, I sort of get the boogeyman of what we're talking about, where there's a lack of, well, anything that makes great writing.
yeah, I'm trying to think of anything I saw. I just Yes, to me, the antonym of art is propaganda. It's some message that the writer wants to get across that isn't sort of lived in, that isn't like down to his core what he feels about things, but just like, oh, I think this is right, and it's been this sort of detached, rationalistic kind of fashion.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you mentioned that. I think that's pretty. I think that's good.
Yeah, and like for me, like I remember somebody mentioning, like I was mentioning Zola's German out to somebody, and they're like, oh, that's just about the coal miners back in the 1860s. Like, how can I care about that? And like the answer is like, did you read the book? Like, it's very relatable. Like,
Yeah,
it's a lot about a lot more than that. It's like, I mean, sure, it is about that, and you get a lot of concrete information about what the mines were, but it's like even those things are like it's just a stunning backdrop. It's like to actually crawl through those mines, like the way of sudden changes of hot and cold, the darkness, the mire, the fear of sudden collapse. It's as grand and dramatic as fighting a dragon in a cave. It's like there's no difference in a sense in that way. Um, so anyway, but it's like yeah, like that's what's relatable. Like that's why I care is that like no, Hoffman he feels with his whole soul about these people. Like they're humans forever. They're not just humans of the 90s or the 40s.
I agree. Okay, I have nothing else to say about this play. I liked it.
Well, I mean, like, if there's any, yeah, yeah, I'll say I liked it. It's very moving, the drama of it, and there are memorable characters. I just have to, God, just the beginning sequence. Anyway, we talked about it enough. Yeah, let's move on to Hannele. I'm probably
Yeah,
gonna
because I
relapse into calling it Hannele all the time because I don't know. I like that name better. But anyway, yeah, go on. What do you want to say about
and then I'll lapse into Annabelle Lee, and then you'll get mad because we'll just like be talking about random wrong pieces of works.
it?
Okay,
Okay.
I okay. I don't know if I liked it, and I
You
feel
don't
really
know if you
bad.
liked it.
I don't know. I'm
That's
I'm
fine, man.
sorry.
That's
I don't
fine.
know. Like I didn't hate it, and I watched some like clips of it and read it, and I did not like. it's just like really honest, and that's great. And it's sad, and I just need you to convince me of some things. So tell me
Okay.
about it. What's your experience
Okay.
of the play?
Well, my experience, I like what's it, just the beginning with like dealing with Pleshka and Hanke and Heta, and just like there's sordid disputes between each other, just like the ugliness of the way Heta's like constantly like in fear of like is someone going to steal something from me, and then she ends up stealing from them Hanka behind his back while like there's teasing going on, and it's just that sort of that spiritual torpor and the way they're making fun of poor Pleshka with his stammer. Um, and then you have Hannele come in, like this is the kind of atmosphere she's living in. Like that she'll spend time with. Like this is the world that she's enmeshed in. And I just find her to be such a delicate child. Like the few words that she says, this mouseish, timid, innocent thing that's too delicate for this life she's being thrown into. Um, and how it just gradually transforms and into this fabulous hallucination of of the angels coming down and meeting death and seeing her mother again and having her father cast out. Like all of that's just so. I'm crying nonstop during it. Actually, like it's like I'm crying so much that by the end I'm like I'm actually just exhausted. I can't cry anymore. Like it just hurts too much. I just relate to that. I find the poetry just beautiful and endearing in its simple spoken kind of way. Anyway, that's at least the way I'd sum up what I get out of it. Just it's in a sense it's like the Weavers except hyper focused on this individual and the abuse
That's
that
like a lot, framing wise, I like the two plays because I think there is a lot of inversion between the two.
she.
I also think that in the first one, the elements of fantasy are positioned completely differently from the elements of fantasy in this one. Like fantasy in the Weavers is on the side of the priest saying basically lies to keep the state intact.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas here, um, fantasy functions completely differently and more in a ambiguous way, maybe
Well,
I mean, or
well, I
fantasy is
don't.
not the right word.
Yeah,
Metaphysical, magic, just magical stuff.
yeah. As in, like the way, like the first time she mentioned something, like she's sort of her half waking up, and she's talking about, oh, I hope the blacksmith has a stone in one pocket and a wood in his hand, so he doesn't get blown away by the breeze. Like that's apparently a reference to some folk tale, and it's
Oh,
like
okay.
the fact that she's like thinking in those terms, literally in those terms, and then later how she's being given this fabulous wedding dress, to die in, and this and she's these crystal shoes, which are Cinderella shoes, and it's explicitly said like she has this. This is for the smallest feet in the kingdom, and oh, you have them, in the literal Cinderella scene, and how that gets combined with Christianity.
He has the
Like
fantasy of marrying the guy and whatever.
yeah, well, and it's like the fact that it's like she's seeing angels and she's seeing Jesus at the end. It's like it's all of those different the things she's heard in church and the songs she's sung and the bedtime story her mother's told her, all of them are just one solid texture in her mind.
Yeah. Okay. I go back and forth between my brain is just like broken and like this just brutal honesty for so long and so like, oh, and there's angels, oh, not the death one, go to the light, my eyes are I'm sorry, I'm not having an
It's
emotional
okay. It's okay.
connection at all.
I savaged Pan's Labyrinth when we talked last
Well,
time.
that's where now I really wonder what's going on because I had a like I was like watching this and I was like, this is not it. And you were like, this is not it for Pan's Labyrinth. And I'm like, okay, is there like is this the heart of some psychological difference between
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is
because
curious.
I was like, this needs some subtlety or like some like because I'm just like, oh yeah. Like part of me wanted there to be like I want to do like a Rosencrantz or Guildenstern are dead retelling of this story from like the chambermaid getting spooked by all the ghosts trying to leave the house or like I don't know. There's just something like so wish fulfillmenty about it that I just kind of was like, okay. And then she's, oh yeah, of course, she's a little girl.
Well,
Like,
like I find it. I guess
mhm.
one thing is, do you like Hannele? Does she endear you in something like the way Melisande endeared you?
Yeah, I liked Hannele. I liked her guilt at something like committing suicide. Or I would also say, reading between the lines, I think like it almost goes without being spoken that there's a metaphorical loss of innocence between the stepfather and the girl. I don't think it's doesn't have to actually be rape, but there is a degree of like the stepfather brutalizing her is the agency of rape in a
Yeah,
way in a
yeah.
metaphorical
It's
like
yeah.
it
That's
almost
never.
doesn't matter if it's
Yeah,
real
I
or
don't.
not.
I don't think it's ever like actually mentioned, but the fact that she's beat brutally, like bruises all over her body.
Loss that's the loss of innocence
Yeah,
in that way.
yeah. And
So
then her
like
mother's died,
and the
and
mother died.
and her father, which is only alluded to very briefly. Like in part one of her hallucinations, it's mentioned her father's meeting the mayor, and the father's like I think that's mentioned as like just like oh your father's doing well too. But maybe she died when he was a child. I don't know. But
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that works. I think her guilt works. I think that what I don't like is the ending.
the
Uh,
very ending, or
very not okay. Obviously, this girl's gonna die. I'm not saying she should live. What I'm not the plot ending, but the framing of the ending where like there's these long, nice, don't get me wrong, images of paradise that
mhm.
go on for like 4 pages.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, they go on for a while.
and although I did like that after that, they just the end of the play is, yep, she's dead. Yeah, okay, see ya.
Yeah, well,
That was kind of
I mean, to
nice.
me, like, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's just like from this, fabulous hallucination to the sober, brutal reality of yeah, she's gone. All that's just
Yeah.
there's
I
no acting.
guess. I guess, and I'm willing to be completely wrong, but the feeling of this to me is almost self-indulgent. Like it's just so over the top and so, and I just am like, it just seems like a person's death fantasy. I mean, that's what it is, but it just seems so wish fulfillment-y that
I
I just I don't know.
yeah.
It's too
I mean,
perfect.
I can kind of see where you're coming from in a sense. I mean, it's a little hard for me to judge it because, again, like at this stage of the play, like I'm just exhausted emotionally. Like I can't
Oh
cry.
no, don't worry. I
But
still did have that, which is why I didn't immediately say I hated it, is I still was emotionally exhausted. So in that way it still
yeah,
works.
so let me just read a little bit of what the stranger, which is clearly Jesus, is a saying.
Wait, it's Jesus?
But you know, boldly they travel through the blossoming air, the swans. Through the thrilling, clangorous fragrance of the sky, they circle in eternal festive procession. Their wings sound like harps in their flight. They pull streamers of green veil behind them. They look upon Zion on garden and sea, and down below, hand in hand, they wander, stately beings to the heavenly land. The red, yeah, and so on. Yeah, I can see a little bit of what you're talking about, but I'm just on board with these images. I like I like that it's as over the top, as intense as you could go, because this is the end. This is the vision of heaven that she's seen. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I think yeah. Although I again, what I feel bad because what I want to do is overwrite the play, and instead of being presented with what I'm giving and interpret. But like I'm reminded of a really horrible thing that Zizek said that I also thought was kind of funny, where like there were he's referencing this time there was like a bunch of phone calls from loved ones who knew they were going to die. I forget which flight it was,
yeah,
but
whichever.
they knew whatever, and they're all saying the same thing like I love you, I've always loved you, you're great, be nice to the kids, feed the dog, whatever, blah blah blah. And Zizek said something along the lines of like, I just really wish one of them said, I'm breaking up with you. And like I have always hated. And obviously that's ridiculous and not socially acceptable. But what I wanted a little bit more pushed in here is the aspect of guilt. That where guilt is subtly around and she feels it and it contrasts with the overwhelming religious feeling. But like I don't know. I just felt a little too one note on it. I was
Yeah, that's
just
an
like one note.
interesting. Yeah, that okay. That's interesting to bring up. There's okay. Well, here's something that's kind of feeding into that a little bit. Is that she's a suicide. Um, because she's the one who jumped into the water. I mean, I think it's well. There's a certain ambiguity here. Of she hears Jesus in the water. That's what she says, and she goes down to hear it there into the water, and then she's saved. And there's a little bit of a question mark of like, well, did she just hallucinate in her hunger fueled hysteria? And she heard Jesus and she followed. And she does earnestly want to die. Like that is something she
Of course.
says multiple times. She does not want to get better.
And
She
I think that is something. I think if I asked Hauptmann the same thing I was saying, he would say, "You're an idiot. Isn't it trauma enough that a little girl is saying she wants to die?" Like I think there is a little bit of saving grace in that type of language where it's like, "Oh yeah, that's horrible."
Yeah, and it's it's a tainted the fact that it's a 14-year-old girl committing suicide. Well, and it's not clear exactly if she meant it as a suicide exactly. If this is just a subconscious fulfillment. But in a sense, she wanted to die. I guess it doesn't really matter. Maybe she originally intended and then afterwards sort of rewrote the history, which I don't think is the right way of interpreting it. Or she really wants to commit suicide, and her subconscious is giving her a guilt-free way of doing that.
Like giving her an out.
Yeah.
And
And
then that out keeps
because
on giving for 30 pages.
yeah, but she keeps it is referenced. It is
Yeah.
referenced, through the later parts of the hallucinations of like, oh, the way it's like, like, oh, the pastor won't be able to bury her because of this or that, and like, no, but she's been found to be a saint. Another one says, in these hallucinatory characters, like there's a
I
certain
like that actually, that
yeah,
moment.
yeah, and it's like there's a sort of there's this guilt a little bit there that's being acknowledged, but also being sort of tossed aside, and like the way that they chant "murderer, murderer" about the father when he appears in her hallucination, and the way they stress, at least say, he is the murderer alone. He's the only reason why she died. And in a sense, that's correct. Like the stepfather is the murderer. There's no doubt about it. The stepfather killed her spiritually.
Yeah.
But there is a sense of writing her off, right? As in like okay, we have this excuse. We're going to stick with it. At least it's a question mark in my mind. Maybe it's different if you read it in the German. Um,
Yeah, and there is
so,
also like a background abstracting mythical like figure of the father that just because she's young is sort of like at once both like can be Jesus, can be the true. It's almost like there's two mythical fathers. the bad father, which is this guy,
Mhm.
and then the good father, which is kind of like a lot of people. It's Jesus. It's like, it's the husband in the future. It's
Well,
the
I don't really, yeah, I don't really see a mythical, the good mythical father. It's really just you have the teacher who she loves and who's also married. You have the which is unfortunate. You have, and that's how Jesus is presented, is basically under basically the semblance of being the teacher. Um,
yeah,
and she gets a wedding dress for when she dies, um, a beautiful wedding dress, which is just heartbreaking. Um, and and that's so I don't, the father figure is purely the only father figure is this horrible stepfather, essentially, with a footnote about her biological father. Um, and basically, the good things are basically her teacher slash Jesus, who she's in love with.
yeah. I mean, I think okay. So first of all, yeah, I would say sure, but I think also there's like I think this is a lot more symbolist than the first play. The first play is just like here it is. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. There's no snap. There's no sim. This is just straight naturalism. The
Yeah,
way.
straight naturalism. This one though, I think that I think there's a primeval adequate father who is not the stepfather, evil stepmother, evil stepfather, kind of a flip there
Mhm.
figure of. So that aligns with a lot of the bad step blank that is then replaced by husband good father later, whatever
Yeah, I
male
mean, I'm
that just kind of fits
okay.
with that lineage of that. I'm not really sure if I can say anything interesting about it. I just think that that sort of is the
Yeah, I
archetypal
mean, it
movement
has
there.
this like nice sort of folk quality, like the stepfather. I mean, like Flagman Thiel, which is sort of tied for first, along with Hellscreen is my favorite play. Favorite short story. Another one by Hauptmann, Flagman Thiel, and like that has a vicious stepmother.
Yeah.
Um, so like there's a little bit of like this is a nice traditional folk tale like enemy, and yeah, I guess one thing is also very straightforward. Why? I mean, I guess I'll also say like in a very literal level, Hauptmann is a naturalist. He believes in the dominance of biology and environment as the sole forces in human life. And the stepmother or father is like, well, yeah, it's not your blood, it's not your biology, so of course you don't give a shit. Like you don't care about this kid. They're just a burden to you biologically. As I imagine that's how Hopkins thinking about it. Given his fervent naturalistic beliefs. Um, I just wouldn't make much more out of it. Um, in that sense, it's like he's thinking about things in terms of. I actually, in a sense, would almost say that this is a very naturalistic play in that it's trying to naturalistically recreate the mind of this poor peasant girl who confuses Christianity with folk tales, with Grimm's fairy tales, or whatever. Um, I'd sort of almost put it that way.
Yeah. Well, but like, okay, so I think you're right with everything you're saying. Nothing I'm saying with archetypes is
Mhm.
it's like magic. I think it's
Okay,
just
okay,
the field of symbolism.
okay, okay. I just
Like like I don't I think that you're right that like I think that the weirdest to prove you're right, I mean it would be very weird to go to this play with someone very devout and at the end they're like, yeah, like thank God for Jesus. I think that'd be really weird and like I don't know what we would do with that. You know what I mean? I don't think that would aid in my
yeah,
experience of the play.
yeah. But let's get back to the main, at least to your objection. Like, what what do you want in terms of like you feel like it's just it's over the top, and you just felt like this is just too one note, the happiness of her death. And like I guess to me, it's like it's to me when I'm reading that and I'm reading the beautiful poetry and fantasy, it's hanging over me the fact that this is a dying girl who's dreaming that these colors are decaying. Um, that this wonderful puff of and involved puff of smoke is dissolving before our eyes. Um, I guess that's I don't know how to. It is bittersweet, like in the deepest way, just because of like what happens at the end. I don't know how else, what else you'd want here.
I didn't like the poetry.
Okay,
That
no,
might be
fair
me.
enough.
I thought the poetry was really ham-fisted and over the top.
Okay, well, I
And
mean,
so that
it's a translation, so fair enough.
does, but that does still work with what you're saying. There is a bittersweetness to the clear drops their humid burden let drip upon her like refreshing rain. Take soft silk and dry her limbs as carefully as lily petals. From golden vessels pour refreshing wine. I don't
Yeah,
know. There's an aspect of Chat
yeah,
GPT 19th century thing to it. And
yeah, yeah.
however,
It's
but without destroying your point, like I don't want to be rude to your experience. I do think that I could see that as bittersweet. This is where I would give a more subjective. So like everything we've been saying, we've been very like, you know, critical. It's not the story that resonates with me
mhm.
in the sense that um I like things to have more of a direct dichotomy. And in a way, I can easily see someone coming like, well, how can you possibly not like this then? Because there's a dichotomy of her dying with the positive speech. And I guess there's something like I wonder. I don't know what it is. Like it might be
I
the
think
fact
it's
that she's too perfect. Maybe I don't know.
yeah. I think
It doesn't resonate with
part
me.
of it might be that it's more of a background, a bit more of a subtext to what's being said, the tragedy. While for you, it's like no, you'd like it to be referenced in every line, sort of, or you'd like it to be interwoven explicitly. In
Oh,
into.
something. I just broke my book accidentally. That was kind of funny.
Oh.
I'm gonna read the rest of these plays at some point too. Yeah, maybe. I also think that like part of what I don't usually this might peg me as a 20th 21st century subject is when I read a work and the type fits the token, I guess, to use analytic language. The the archetype of the little girl fits the being of this little girl. Um I
Mm.
like it when there's more of an inversion in the play with the archetype. So I wish there was more of a like because in order to experience this play for me, I had to go along with the idea that childhood equals innocence, and this play is about a certain amount of brutal innocence lost. I think it would be cool if like oh, this is going to sound horrible, but like I wish there was more along the lines of like if I rewrote this play and did a modern retelling, there would be all the same things with the angels and everything, but the girl would also try to murder the animals.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like because that's more in line with like the psychology we know today, but also there's like a more
No, no, I get that,
no,
and
and I think that's
I'm
where
very much on board with
yeah,
this.
and
I'm
that's where
actually,
I'm doing violence to the text because he didn't write that, so I'm like I didn't
yeah.
have to kind of deal with that, you know.
No, no, no. I'm on board with what you're saying here. Of like, I could see a beautiful sort of not version, but inspired work
Mm-hmm.
of Hannele, where there is a sense of her fantasies are perverted and corrupted because of the brutality and trauma she's experienced. Where it's like you still get that image of she is good, there is real goodness there, but she's been turned into a cannibal because of the insidiousness of what has infected her heart. Um, like I could see, and now it'd be almost even more touchingly tragic. Of like she's not, um, she has been tainted in an even deeper way. Um,
Yeah, and I think by the way, Pelias at Melisande did this really well with everyone forgetting. There was something about that Melisande forgetting things that really hit it for me. It was like, oh, all of this magic is happening, and then she goes, I don't remember. I felt that was so brutal and beautiful, but also like truly horrifying in this really magical and
yes,
play.
yeah, I'm in agree. Like as in the fact, okay, yeah, I think what sort of a bit of what we're getting at here is the trauma is here just in a sense physical for poor Hanel.
Yeah.
While what would have hit you more is like, no, I want psychological trauma. I want some like there's a little bit of that with her of how she's shivering. Now she's like so scared of the people when she wakes up, the way she's quaking when she hallucinates her father. There are things like that, and I will also say like Hanel, I sympathize with her. I'm touched by her, but she's not a fully real character to me exactly. There's just not quite enough to grab onto like there is with Melisande from last week.
I don't know. I still kind of liked her because,
No, I do too.
yeah,
I,
I
I
think you're
I like
right.
her a lot more than Peleus.
Yeah, well, so wait, here's an example of maybe where things get a little weird. Like, by the way, I think someone else could make a really subtle argument saying, Chris, everything you want is in this text. You're just not reading it right. And maybe like in 10 years, I'm going to read this and go, oh shit, that was really disturbing. And I didn't
Or
see
in the
that.
German.
Or in the
Um,
German. Yeah. Okay. So here's one example where like the father and the lovers get kind of combined in the way that kids sometimes do. Like,
okay, okay.
you know, back to the Freudian worldview for a second here.
Um,
Believe it. But here for a second. Hanel, teacher Gottwald is a handsome man. His name is Heinrich. We'll get married, we two. I'm on page 185. We have the same edition for this.
oh yeah.
Um, oh yes, the two of us, teacher Gottwald and I. And I'm not going to sing it, but I always think of it in South Park voices. And after
No,
they,
don't fucking do that. Don't fucking do that.
I'm sorry, I'm
Don't
sorry.
fucking do that.
And after I know, I'm gonna okay. And after they'd become betrothed, the two went off together in a darkened room. Their bed was clothed with linen and snow white feathers. Okay, so at that point, she's kind of got this marriage fantasy, and it is you know, the moment of impurity or actually like having sex where it suddenly goes swoop. He's got a beautiful beard on his head. The clover blooms. Listen, he's calling me. Don't you hear him? I'm skipping a little. That was hair. The Lord Jesus. Suddenly, that's the moment where you have the split back to a totally different figure, whether paternal or more just or truly honestly celestial. It's like I think there's a lot of readings there. I think one reading would be that for the 14-year-old girl, uh, sexual acts lead to the divine, or we just can't do that because she's pure. So we're gonna that's where we split to the divine. I think there really is a split there though, where it's like, oh, here's the marriage bed, and that's when Jesus shows up.
I feel like you maybe when I read that, I'll just give you how I feel about it is that
Yeah, yeah.
she's in love with the teacher, and she's there's this and I don't really take it as like yeah he's an authority figure in a sense like he's a teacher, that's what
Yeah,
he
but
is.
she's got like a crush.
Yeah, it's got a crush, and it's like okay, and like that's a straightforward, natural, and like okay, like she's saying this thing about the bridal bed, um, and like that's just to me like touching and beautiful, and I just read that as a straightforward like I don't think there's nothing leering or there's nothing like I don't think Hauptmann's the kind of guy who's prudish in any way. Um, and the fact that then it's like he then combined with sort of Lord Jesus, like when he's like, oh, he's calling me, and then how Jesus and the teacher are then the same person. at the end of the play. Um, it's to me just, yeah, her mind is confused. I just sort of read it as that. It's like these beautiful things are all being conjoined in her mind. I'm not seeing that as like, oh, now we're escaping. Now we have to like ignore like the sexual parts. Like, no, it's. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble articulating.
No,
Um,
no, I think you're right. I think there's also a combination like of limitations. So like the limit is that, you know, in a darkened room, their bed was closed, is the presentation of the bed as pure. And that's like a certain limit to her fantasy, right?
yeah, yeah. Like and I just read it that way. Like it's a innocent view of sexuality. It's
Yeah. Okay, I think I got a reading that'll make us both happy then.
okay.
There's two limits. That's just one limit, is that's the end of her fantasy with that.
Yeah, with Gottwald. Yeah,
Yeah. But that's not the fantasy that gets the play. That's death. So that's where that other one enters in. Or I mean
yeah.
it's sort of that's where it switches over to that other one.
Well, of heaven, the fantasy of heaven and of the beauty with the angels and all that, and
Yeah.
it's combined in this contradictory kind of way. It's beautifully contradictory. The way it's like, she's in her bridal gown, this beautiful bridal gown, with the Cinderella shoes. These are romantic symbols, and she's also seeing Jesus there, and the Jesus is also the teacher, and it's all just conjoined as one thing. It's not coherent. Um,
Yeah.
and
Also
I love that actually. I just actually love. Actually, that's almost like one of the things that I love in just when literature does this right, where it's almost like this attack of images and of different things that have been laid out earlier in a work. They just assault you one after the other in this like kind of not this non-linear fashion. Like to me, Poor Folk. It ends on this savage letter, where it's just every little thing, every little bit of tenderness, sort of laid out throughout the play or throughout the novel, is then just put together in this incoherent, almost like rambling letter, and it's so touching because of the way it's like you're being attacked from every side. All the fireworks are going off, emotionally, and I love that. It's like it's just so. I wish I knew another example to illustrate it, but it's very appealing to me when that
I think that's
happens.
helping me get better because I had this is much better than the images I was having when I was reading it. I was thinking of in Kurosawa films when someone doesn't die and they just start giving speeches, and it's very stylized, like in Ran, where it's like, I have this really important thing to tell you. It's going to last about 3 paragraphs. The moment I finish, I'm out. And that was not charitable. And I think the images you're saying, yeah, I can get on board with. I also think that I guess I guess one of the things I find interesting about this play is that you only know her at a very given moment of crisis until death. Obviously, you don't get presented with her
Mhm.
uh, as she is supposed to be. But I think that is sort of the point, is that she was never the way she was supposed to be, right? Because on page 188, the first angel says, "The gold of the hills in the sunshine was never granted to you." So that satisfies a sort of narrative curiosity where you're like, well, has it always been this bad? And what it does is it doesn't just say that, yeah, it says also that she's never really been herself or able to be in a certain sense.
Well, I think she's always been herself. Like one thing is like the fact that the village children teased her by calling, I think, the ragged princess. Um,
Yeah. Oh
of
yeah, I
like
forgot about that.
there is this sense of she's always been this princess, this beautiful, delicate princess who's ragged and horribly maltreated. I actually do feel I will say that it is a little bit of an issue to me. Like it would have been nice to have seen a little bit of Hanel to get more of an understanding of what she was like in a more normal circumstance. It would have just to make her a little bit more real personality. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
wonder about that though. Like, I wonder if
Yeah,
like,
I don't. Yeah, I don't think it would be good for the play because having it present just like no, this is just we're dying. That's where we are.
yeah, like
Um,
our start is in crisis.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think this is perfectly formed in what it is. I just this is a part of me that's like a little more characterization or just some little more details about the sort of things she would have done. Um,
So I have like a little philosophical aesthetic like characterization thing of some of the plays we've been reading, and I want to have you, you know, tear it to shreds or agree or all of the above. Um, so Maeterlinck is like a very much the ones that we read are very much about setting. Each setting is rich and different and specific that in the setting itself conjures up a lot of how the people's personalities are going to be. Um, I think Hauptmann is like a playwright of the event. The Weavers is about the event of them. The like this it's the whole
yeah,
rising and falling is the event of the rebellion and then the event of her death. It's not the same plot wise. Like what's driving the plot is the event itself. Whereas in Peleus at Melisande, you know, there's a regular plot, but the environment gets so
yeah.
absorbed.
I think there's a sense. I'd have to read. Well, let's see. There is okay. Hauptmann in the other three plays in the collection that you have there. Well, I'm not gonna talk about the beaver coat because I just found it fucking boring when I read it. I didn't get the jokes, so I'm sorry, Hoffman, but I don't get your jerk jokes. But Draymond Henschel and Rosa Byrne, like those have more straightforward kind of plots to them.
Yeah.
But I will say, at least in terms of just speaking out specifically what we and actually, Maeterlinck later in his life he wrote a play Manavana where there is a very solid plot and it is a very solid sort of event we might say like resolved within 24 hours. So like there is it's very dramatic. Manavana. I don't think it's as good as Pelleas and Melisande, but it's still really good. Still really good. Um, but I'll definitely say here you're right about these two sets of plays. Pelleas and Melisande and The Blind were about this atmosphere. We're about just this world we are drenched in, and sure, maybe some things happen, but those are really almost more of the environment impinging on you. While here, it's like, no, there is this life changing circumstance. There is a crisis bursting out. That's what we're concerned with here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like um we talked a lot about I mean I'll call it ideologies of nature weeks ago, not during this podcast, but like in another one of I don't know why Zizek's quotes come up. He's very quotable about art come up, but he says like we should view nature as a series of catastrophes without explanation, which is I mean my heart goes
that's
out, right?
right.
Like
That's right.
beautiful,
That's
right?
great.
And
That's
that's
beautiful.
sort
That's
of
a really great line.
yeah, I'll send you this video where we it really hits on a lot of the stuff we talked about, and we're like, oh, I hate that. But I think that Hauptmann is more on the side of nature, or no, I think that would be another playwright, you know, another like the event sort of takes over. I guess that would be more the death of this girl, is that she's sort of succumbing to death. She doesn't have control over it. It's a catastrophe happening.
Yeah, well,
Like a
Hoffman.
crowd is a catastrophe happening in a
Yeah,
sense.
well, yeah, like all. Well, in all four of the plays you've read recently,
Yeah.
characters don't control what happens to them.
No.
The blind, it's like yeah, they're just a bunch of blind people sitting around, and their priest guide has died. They're helpless. The only sort of guy they had briefly was a baby who could see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it's
But
ultimately the message is the opposite. Yeah, exactly.
and Pellis and Melisande, I mean, they're walking backwards towards their fates. That's basically the line that Arkell has in
Yep.
that play. And here, it's like, yeah, these people, these the workers or the weavers, yeah, like they're just. I mean, sure, there's sort of figures like Becker and Jaeger who are like more in a leadership position.
Well, Jaeger, wait,
Not,
we got to talk about Jaeger in a sec. Keep going, because I wanted to say something about him.
oh
He's
yeah,
a
yeah, well, yeah. Jaeger's a
very
little more complicated. It's
well,
weird.
he's the element of. I mean, he's the match. He's this element of chaos that his ideological viewpoint kind of shifts based on who he's talking to, and he sort of is this fire starter that without him, I don't know, it would have been someone else, but you almost get the sense that they would have someone more would starve.
Yeah, well, Jaeger's interesting. Of like he's someone who he started off as a weaver, presumably, in that community. He left for the army, and he got ahead basically by being a good shoe shine and getting up early. By being basically very not sycophantic, but playing the game in that kind of way, and he's gotten to a comfortable position as a result of by boot kissing.
Yes.
And I don't you don't blame him for it because I mean he wants to be a weaver. But it's very it's almost a facetious form of Horatio Alger. Um,
Who wants to be a weaver?
um,
So he like shows up and he's like, well, this is a pile of shit. What's going
yeah,
on here?
yeah, but like Jaeger is or Jaeger, I guess that'd be what it is. He's more he's like he's moved by human sympathy.
Yeah.
He didn't have to be a part of it. At least not. But anyway, but getting back to the main point. But yeah, and here it's like yeah, both of the Weavers. It's like yeah, they're just pushed along by this horrifying environment. They're just gasping for breath, in a sense. And then with Hannele, it's like yeah, they're this girl is gonna die. This girl is gonna die. Her poor, her mother dies. She's in frightful poverty. Her stepfather is abusive. Like, yeah, she's gonna kill herself. She doesn't have a she doesn't choose that. Her subconscious it chooses it for her. Actually, um,
Yeah, like agency in Hauptmann is not necessarily, and actually I think you could write a book on the agency of crowds gone wild, right? Because there is a madness to crowds going wild that is beautifully outlined by Hauptmann in this book or in this play. But it's a weird question to ask. Does anyone in the crowd have agency when they're in the crowd?
no, they don't have agency. They're
No,
drunk. They're drunk.
they're
I mean,
drunk.
like one
Exactly.
one moment of agency you can like is when they're storming Dreisinger's house. And the way it's described is they're sort of timidly moving forward and then jumping back and then getting forward. It's there's no one leading the charge. There's no one who's like got control. It's more of just diffusion, a random walk, Brownian motion guiding
That's
them
literally
inside.
a teacher at my undergrad did a paper presentation once on the physics of mosh pits. And yes.
Yeah,
Like you started
yeah.
going, yeah. And I think there's a sort of conflict, right, between the reason that the old guy has when he's done because he has certain points that are quite like ego, reason, I am in control, I am making logical claims. Even if you disagree, I'm still a person making claims. And the crowd, which is in a certain sense sympathetic to the crowd, I am sympathetic to the crowd, said that like Yoda, but it's never going to have the agency that he has. And I think that's why those two are put together as one has still their sense of reason and intellect, and the crowd doesn't, or it has it's surrendered to
Well,
Brownian motion.
well, it's. I mean, the thing is that the people are Brownian motion too, like, in terms of what they do. It's like they're. It's just this is just one way in which these helpless people get congealed is in this other sort of formation. Now,
Yeah.
Hauptmann has a certain spiritual sense of there is something tender and beautiful and value oriented about human beings. They're not just sort of tin men that you wind up and then move along. Like that's almost really like a Dadaist way of presenting them.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no, I still that's what when I
yeah,
said like there's still a humanist core
yeah.
to
There's
how.
humanist core. Hauptmann is not. He doesn't have contempt for human beings. Is one thing about him. Um, he's deeply sympathetic,
Yeah.
heartbreakingly sympathetic. If I,
Well, I think you convinced me on some of the merits of the play. You really did. You brought me up
okay,
from the depths.
okay. Well, I'm happy. I mean,
Not
I'm
all of them.
yeah.
I resented having to read those 4 page. Sorry, I like poetry.
No, it's fine. It's
I
fine.
didn't like those 4 pages at
I
the
have to
end.
say, I think I resented them too when I first read them. like I was just already so heartbroken that I was like, okay, whatever, whatever. And like,
Whatever. I just felt like there's a Bob's Burgers episode where they sing a song in part one called "Good Things Are Good," and I felt like with those words, it was like good things
yeah,
are good.
I get
Just a
it. I
little
get it.
much.
I don't. I mean, I did. It did cross my mind, like when I was reading it, of like, yeah, there's a reason why most people read Dante's Inferno and not his Paradise. Um, like that, that crossed my mind. There's
Yeah.
a little more color to perdition than there is to paradise, at least in the Christian context. But
Okay.
it's
So final question for you though, because I think we could actually talk about these two plays for like 8 more hours.
yeah,
Because like
we need to wrap it up.
they're so rich. I mean,
Yeah, they
Hauptmann is
really
very.
fucking are. I love Hauptmann. I love him to
Yeah,
death.
this is a great one. So I mean, obviously in the future, if you want to do Hauptmann again,
Yeah,
I do
well,
another.
we will do Flagman Thiel eventually because that's my. Um, it's always it's always if you put a gun to my head, I'll say it's my favorite short story. But anyway, go on. What's your
Oh,
question?
oh, this is excuse me, sorry, I coughed. This is still literature, but kind of leaving the traumatic aspects, and then I think we should do our, what is the traumatic
Okay.
aspect of these? Um, do you think that Hannele's play is a Christian play?
No,
I would
no,
agree. Yeah,
no. It's
yeah,
Christianity is just another folk tale.
yeah.
That's the way that it's just another little it's an endearing one,
Yeah. It
you know.
helps her.
But it's just another story like Cinderella. That it's touching, but it's a fantasy, and it dies with you. Um, is there any other since it might be Christian? I mean, in some broad, abstract kind of way, like the helplessness of Hanel before sort of the circumstances forced upon her. It's sort of like fate or environment. Like you don't have control over your life, but let's not go there. Um,
Sure, we don't have to. Yeah,
yeah, that's not, we've already done enough. I mean, like that was I was always mentioning that with like Maeterlinck. He has literal fate, It's like
yeah.
this.
Well, I think that like your readings make sense to me in a lot of ways, and like I also like I'm willing to go a lot of different readings, a multiplicity of readings, but also I will at the end of the day go, yeah, that one might even be true, but it's at such a low amplitude. Like, who cares? Like, there's certain background haunting stories where it's like, yeah, at that level, this might be fully immersed in Christian culture, but like at that doesn't really matter for our sense of
Well, I
traumatic
mean,
hit of it.
the fact that it doesn't end with "Dear Jesus is singing," it ends with a doctor saying she's dead.
Right.
Like that's saying, yeah, this is a myth. This is a hallucination. This isn't real.
I could just see like a Boz Lerman retelling of this, where at the end she's just like "Bata!" and then like gets lifted off into the clouds.
Don't.
I'm
That's
sorry,
funny.
I'm
That's
ruining this
funny.
play. That would be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. You need to be a little. I appreciate it, but I also kind of hate it.
I also hate it. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. But no hard feeling. But anyway, okay. So how did this traumatize you, Chris?
Okay, so for the Weavers, I got a sense of surrendering to an event.
Hmm.
You have to give up a sense of self. You have to make a sacrifice, and then you realize that these people have already been sacrificing quite a bit. They've already they
Yeah.
already have very little of themselves to be, and I think that that sense of desperation was very very impactful
Mhm.
for me. How about for you?
Well, for me, with the Weavers, it's just this sense of sheer desperation, as you're saying, of just raw human suffering. Was just beautifully presented and endearing, and it's like I didn't actually. When I first read, Luis saying about her four dead babies. I didn't, it was like, oh, this is great, but I didn't like reading it now. I was like, yeah, I'm about to cry. It's like my voice is cracking. It's so touching and brutal. It's like the things that people have gone through, and so that really hit me hard in that way. And with Hannele, I just I mean, for me, whenever there's a story where there's someone sensitive and innocent and good-hearted being brutalized by a vulgar, insensate world, that always just hits me hard. That's always something that resonates very deeply, and that kind of disparity. So that's what it that's what that's why I find it so close to my heart. Hannele. Anyway,
Beautiful.
all right. So it's been great, Chris. And we'll be doing William Gass's "In the Heart of the Country," which I'm sure will be nothing like the last four plays we've read. Uh,
Not so sure.
maybe I
I
don't know.
haven't read them. I don't
Yeah,
know
we'll
what he's
see.
like.
I just feel it's this weird postmodern thing. Like we'll see, we'll see. I'm
It's more about being from the Midwest, if I remember from our.
okay.
So I don't
Well,
think it's going to be. I don't think we're reading pension here.
okay. Well, I hope that the Midwest can capture the spirit of Silesia. So,
I have good food.
all right, all right,
Dogs.
all
All
right,
right.
all right. So
Bye,
see you later.
Ray.
All right,
Yeah.
bye.